Why are Kenyans protesting countrywide against high taxes?
Before I give you a breakdown as to why Kenyans are rejecting the finance bill through protests, we have to look at this both based on political and legal framework.
Continue.
In 2022, Kenyans went to the ballot, and the current regime was voted in based on the promises that they gave to the people. And this was none other than the bottom-up economic approach policies that was widely supposed to support the hustling low-class citizen in Kenya.
Continue.
But when you look at the proposed income tax, value-added tax, excise duty, and so on, you find that these proposed tax policies lack neutrality, they are not accommodative, they are not simple, it lacks predictability, it is not fair, it is not equitable, and it is not efficient.
And how is that tax proposal not equitable?
For example, look at the proposed motor vehicle tax. Look at the tax ceiling rate and the floor tax rate. When you calculate this, you find that the person owning the cheapest car while paying an insurance which is around 5,000 Kenya shillings, which is the lowest, and when you factor in the increments included in that amount, you find that at the end of the day, the amount being paid is more than the 2.5% that the government is talking about. So when you round off probably one of the most expensive cars being owned in Kenya, whereby the ceiling levy is around 100,000 Kenya shillings, that is when the car is around 20 to 25 million Kenya shillings. Factor in the increments included, you find that this person is likely to pay around 0.5%. So there is no equity here because the person with the cheap car may end up paying high taxes compared to the person with an expensive car. Leave alone the situation whereby you find that a wealthy man is able to pay taxes comfortably than a struggling low or middle class person who is hustling to get more income.
Okay. Are there other taxes proposed?
There is also this proposed eco-levy tax, whereby things being taxed will be like smartphones, cameras, pencil sharpeners, diapers, rubber tire, among others, which I cannot mention here because of time. These are things which affect the day-to-day life of a Kenyan citizen, making Kenyans believe that this is a move to make life of a Kenyan citizen more hard and expensive. So currently, this very ordinary Kenyan is trying to identify himself that as the government is proposing or planning to raise the taxes, where is the ordinary person placed and what is this ordinary citizen gaining from this move? Remember, the public debt in Kenya by 2024 was about 11.2%. This is far beyond the 10 trillion Kenyan shillings. Almost 50% of government revenue is going to pay debts. Also, you can remember that.
Yeah.
The government is still doing massive borrowing from the IMF that cannot be accounted for.
Continue.
And one more thing that Kenyans should know is that the IMF does not stand with the people. Even if the government decides to tax the people to the point of absolute poverty, as long as they pay their debt, IMF does not care.
So, do you mean that Kenyans should not be taxed?
No, this is what I mean. A nation must be able to generate taxes for the government to be able to serve its citizens by ensuring that various systems of government is functioning. But remember, much that this tax proposal is punitive, there are some positive elements in it. Unfortunately,
Continue.
the positive part of it is that the KRA, Kenya Revenue Authority, came up with something called ETIMS.
ETIMS? What do you mean by ETIMS?
ETIMS is Electronic Tax Invoice Management System. It came up with this thing to ensure that various persons involved in various businesses in one way or another must be compliant or ensure that taxes are easily collected. The negative part of it is that the proposals in the finance bill was going to tax Kenyans, which is very okay, no problem about that. The problem is that this kind of taxing going to take place is an overtaxing kind of exercise, since the government did not fully involve the citizens to participate satisfactorily in this exercise. They did not interpret this to the people as required in Article 10 of the Kenyan Constitution. This is also against Article 201 of the Kenyan Constitution, where I may quote in 201A, which clearly states that there shall be openness and accountability, including public participation in financial matters. But here, you find that there has been no sign of full public participation in this matter. The government financial management has been poor, irresponsible, not clear, which is again violating Article 201E, which states that financial management shall be responsible and fiscal reporting shall be clear. Therefore here, public participation is not effective public participation in this whole process.
So, do you mean that the government is bulldozing through its citizens?
Probably yes.
Continue.
The government is bulldozing through its citizens because according to the constitution, the view of the people must be factored in this kind of proposals. The last 2023 finance bill in Kenya, which is now an act, the government had some kind of finance proposals.
Continue.
The government went to the people, but the public view rejected a number of finance proposals, like the housing levy, which is now at 1.5%, though it had been reduced from 3%. And even the courts of law themselves had a problem with this kind of process. There was also the proposal of fuel increase from 8% to 16%. The public rejected these proposals, but they are here today. It was implemented by force. This was a great violation by the leadership against its citizens that advocates for public participation, because over 90% of the views of the public was ignored in 2023. And remember, views of the public must be factored in before the government comes up with any kind of decision.
Yes. And what is the work of members of parliament in Kenya?
This is a ridiculous but a very important question. Interestingly, some of the members of parliament claim that even in 2023, they passed the 2023 finance bill by voting yes. But unfortunately, they did not even take time to read the bill. This shows that some members of parliament are taking their voters for a ride, if not a joke. Because they are just in parliament to pass time. They are not involving their constituents into any kind of participation. And this is already violating Article 118 on the Kenyan Constitution, which states that Parliament is mandated to facilitate public participation and involvement in legislative and other business of Parliament and its committees. In other words, this is done by taking whatever is proposed to the people. Then the people come up with their views before the final decision is made. But for now, Kenyans are becoming impatient because in the current act, which is the 2023 finance bill, there are very many things that Kenyans asked their leaders to remove, but they were never removed.
Can you select for me some of the numbers that Kenyans are complaining about?
Yeah, Kenyans were complaining against the 16% VAT tax on bread, 2.5% motor vehicle circulation tax, and they were against the 20% income tax from digital marketing and creators on social media monetization, and many others, which some were scrapped before voting in parliament, while some remained. That is why Kenyans feel that there is no adequate public participation where their views could be taken into consideration in order to give the government the final decision on whether to carry on with the proposed finance policies or drop it. Since a lot of proposals in that document look punitive.
Why do you think that the government of Kenya was trying to bulldoze this finance bill proposal?
This is because first, the publication period was very short. This could give little or no room for possible amendments, in which obviously the government never wanted to change anything in it. So it was impossible for public participation exercise to take place by going deep into the villages for interpretation, where a number of people with literacy challenge are found. So as you see, paying taxes is very okay. There is no problem about it. It contributes highly to self-reliance in a country. The problem is that Kenyans are tired of being overtaxed in a way that does not correspond with development. In other words, these monies end up in corrupt pockets of individual government officials.
Oh. Is that document difficult to understand?
Yes and no at the same time. First, the document has extremely very many pages, probably to thousands. But people only pick what affects their lives. Secondly, the budget making process lacks transparency, and the document does not fully justify the reason as to why taxes should be increased. Thirdly, tax burden is not equitable because the middle class and low class are the ones who suffer the most because of the hassle they go through compared to the wealthy few. Nevertheless, we have very many countries which are overtaxed in Africa more highly than Kenya by far, like Algeria, Ivory Coast, Tunisia, South Africa, and so on. So taxation would not be a problem, but the problem is, will the government put this money being taxed into good and proper use? And the answer is probably no. People have no confidence with the government, especially from the past financial history. Only less than 20% of the public budget in Kenya is going to development projects. This shows that even the government itself is against the Public Finance Management Act, Section 15, which provides that at least 30% of the national budget is allocated to development and 70% towards recurrence.
This man!
But interestingly, most politicians who were rejected in the ballot in Kenya but were leaning on the current government side, that is in 2022, are again holding big sensitive public offices in Kenya today. They are misusing it. They are using the offices unconstitutionally, which is against Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya, which provides for leadership and integrity.
So, what is the result of all this in Kenya today?
So, this is what it has resulted to. Kenyan citizens from Generation Z and Millennials have come up to say that enough is enough. They have decided to use the new avenues, which is social media. And now, soon or later, policy decisions and actions are hugely going to be done through social media, protests, demonstrations, and so on. So widely, Kenyan citizens are now telling the government that, look, we are not here to play these games anymore. It doesn't matter who is passing it, who you are, or what you can do. This shall not work here. Take it somewhere else, not in Kenya. And remember, Article 1 of the Kenyan Constitution clearly says that sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. And now, people are on the streets. Let's see what happens.
And what is your conclusion as a Kenyan millennial?
As a Kenyan millennial, this is my conclusion. I reject the Finance Bill 2024.